Hi, this video was inspired by Rick from the 28mm channel. He basically mentioned if I could create a video where I talk about my preparation for a session, prep time. I think that's a really good idea. It depends a lot on the sort of session that I'm going to run, of course. If it's a, if it's a rules light session and I am creating the module, the adventure, the scenario, then a simple notebook, a small notebook like this one, suffices. It's enough. I only make a few notes. Let's see if I can get this on screen without getting the video too choppy. Just like to give you a... well, you won't see them very well. But they are basically ideas. I write down the different adventure concepts. Sometimes they are just sketches, drafts. They may change radically so, depending on the actions of the player characters. So as you come up with your scenario, just divide it by acts if that is useful. I always divide it in scenes or acts. Even though it's not a play or a movie, I find that structure very comfortable when it comes to organizing things. So in this scene or in this act or in this whatever, you have this encounter. You describe the situation to the players and they interact with it. It's also a good idea to write down some potential outcomes. Just 2 or 3, as in, if the players do this, this happens. If the players do that, this other thing happens. That way, if the players do something completely out of your calculations, you still have like 2 reference points to come up with a 3rd or 4th or 5th option about what happens, and following the logic of the game world. But when it comes to more elaborate experiences, for example in the Ravenhawk campaign, and I won't be showing you like my notes here in order to avoid spoilers, I use larger notebooks with some separate sheets. Some of them I sometimes staple them. Other times I just use paper clips to keep them together, because those systems are a bit more complex. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, even though it's very simplified, it's more simplified compared to other tabletop role-playing games when it comes to the players. The game master still needs a lot of things to take into account, including random encounters, effects based on the setting. When I run Ravenloft, I really put a lot of emphasis on the corruption effects. So far, the players have been doing great in avoiding those effects. The effects of the mist, and the way that Strahd could summon creatures. You know, if you have seen my recent part of the actual play, the village, the town of Balaki is being attacked by all of these creatures that Strahd summoned, or rather raised, because they are undead. So it's a lot more elaborate. It is not impossible, but you do need a bit more preparation. If you can't turn the pages to the enemies as fast as possible, it's much better to have the stat blocks, either copy them and print them, or write them down if it's more comfortable to you. Some people are not comfortable with the way that the stat blocks are organized in the monster manual. That way you can organize the armor class, the attacks, however you wish them to be organized. But definitely when it comes to spells, if you have no confidence in reaching the spell quickly in the player's handbook, write down that spell in a sheet on the side, or photocopy it, or sometimes they sell spell cards for these games, of course. So it all depends on your preference. So prep time, I think it's worth it to really invest on it. And I have said this in other videos. I have seen those game masters that improvise everything, and they are terrible, they are horrible. They almost all of them fall into the having a conversation style, and this is how you say, not necessarily tied to description, rather to improvisation. But for some reason, even if they start out great, you see the path in front of you. It looks like it leads into a ravine, and then So yeah, and you kind of like see like this road, and it's kind of like moving between the trees, and you see like this strange structure on the side. It happens every single time. So I think prep also gets you into the mindset. Perhaps it's because as you prep, you are also writing things into your memory. So perhaps people fall into that conversational pathology when they can't remember well something and they start to come up with things on the fly, but they are not very skilled at it. Because you can still be quite skilled at improvisation. There are many moments in my sessions where I have to improvise, but because I have prepped beforehand, I already have all of those tools. All of those tools just floating there in my mind to serve as references or building blocks. But definitely preparation eliminates that in most cases, in my opinion, in my experience. I also think the adventures where you do not prep at all, where you do not preparate, are pretty lackluster, boring, bland. And usually those game masters that do not prepare, not all of them, but that do not prepare, are not aware of this. So they think, oh, I ran an excellent session. And their players are like, and they, can we, let's play again. And they're like, yeah, let's do this some other time. And they keep on missing the sessions and missing the sessions and missing the sessions because they don't want to basically be honest and tell the game master, you know what, your adventures suck. They suck. They are very boring and bland and predictable. That's another danger of the improvisation. When you improvise everything, because once again, do not distort what I am communicating. As a game master, dungeon master, referee, you will have to improvise many times. But if you do not prepare, you start to predict, that is, the players start to predict how the game master, referee, dungeon master is going to handle things, and then you are just playing the dungeon master. Even if you don't want to do it, you're basically metagaming because, oh well, every time we go into this building, the dungeon master produces this situation that is kind of like mundane, and then an attack happens. And we go into this other building, and again, we encounter a mundane situation, and then an attack happens. If you are of the completely improvisational style, I highly recommend that you record your own sessions, and then watch them, and you will see that you follow a pattern, and it always happens when someone improvises. Like I said, maybe it's related to, almost always, to be fair, I think it's related to the lack of preparation. That the game master suddenly struggles in coming up with an original encounter or scene, and they fall into patterns, because as you fall into patterns, you find a sense of comfort in familiarity. And that's, if we were to take that to the extreme cases, it's kind of like, paradoxically so, it's kind of like those storytellers, the storyteller game master that wants to take the players through a story, and they forget about the organic aspect of roleplay. That's when you start to treat it as some sort of movie or as a comic book or a book, but not in the, oh, let's emulate the genre through roleplay. More like, this is actually a movie and you're the actors, and in scene 1 this is going to happen, action. Now in scene 2 this is going to happen, instead of treating it like a real situation. Because that's, paradoxically, that's one of the things of the best comic books, movies, books. They attempt to portray a situation that is organic and believable, in my opinion, but the players in tabletop role-playing games, they are not following a script, and they are not acting in an improvisational way. Because if you are an actor, like I have said in another video, actors do not describe their actions. You will never see a movie or a theatrical play where there is this actor saying, I draw out my sword and I pointed at my enemy's eyes as I say. No, they do it, they act. They draw the sword, they point the tip at the enemy's eyes, and they say, I will kill you where you stand. That's acting. You can draw a bit from acting for role playing if you wish to, but it is not necessary. Just like you can say, I approach the tavern master and ask for directions. You could say, I approach the tavern master and say, good evening, could you tell us how to reach the Heaven's Point cliff? You see. So overall, when it comes to prepping for simple systems with adventures that you design on your own, a few simple notes. Anything that jogs your memory, that helps your memory during play, just take a look at the notes. Another useful tip by Eli. This is unrelated to preparing for a session, but he finds it quite useful when you are participating as a player character. As the game master, dungeon master starts to communicate information about the game world, non-player characters, clues, etc., he actually uses colored pens. He uses, I think it was red for non-player characters, black for general stuff, and blue for sites or something. I don't remember his designations, but I think that's excellent. I am going to try to apply that. I'm going to have my black pen, red pen, perhaps a blue pen as well, and I'm going to write the names of the non-player characters in red. That way I won't be sometimes you get lost in your notes. You're gonna and then, oh, here it is. I haven't had a moment where it stalls gameplay, but you have those like, what would you say, you feel rushed, that you, what's the name of that? Oh, here it is. But with red pen, it will jump at your eyes because of the red color. That's a great idea, and I'm going to apply it. Thanks, Eli. And like I said, in more involved systems, you do need something a bit bigger, in my opinion. Have your separate sheets. If you have systems that are very crunchy, simulationist, where you want the roleplay to integrate or perhaps even emerge or merge with the complex simulationist mechanics, the game side, definitely have your extra notes, photocopies, whatnot. So I hope you found this video entertaining. Perhaps there are some of you that improvise everything. Do not take it as, oh yes, that's impossible to do. Just take it in my experience, in my opinion. As I have seen many others that fall into the complete improvisation, I have seen many cases of their players sometimes even into Stockholm Syndrome, where they do not know any better. It's kind of like those players that think that role-playing games do not have roleplay in them. What a paradox! They play it as a board game, as a conversation, as a mother may I thing. But when they actually experience roleplay, if they are honest with themselves, there's no going back. They break away from that Stockholm Syndrome when they think that the way that the Dungeon Master, Game Master, Referee is running things is the only way, and suddenly they experience actual roleplay. So when it comes to, if you like to improvise everything, do not feel like you need to prep obligatorily so, or just in a forced way. Just consider it. Perhaps that could actually improve your sessions. If not, just take it like, oh well, that's Abraham's style, that's his way, I have my own way of doing things. Either way, I hope you found this video entertaining, useful, informative. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Now, I wanted to say something else, because I am rotating my phrases. Let's say, there is no place for stupidity in role-playing games unless you are role-playing as a stupid character. Once again, thank you, and see you later.